So, hi everyone. I'm John Laprise. As Frankie said, I have a unusual background. I started in market research, in sector research in telecom and technology. I had the opportunity to move into institutional research, which is market research for universities and colleges. Had the opportunity then to go back and get my PhD, which I did, and I went to school at Northwestern for my PhD. When I was about to finish that, they offered me the chance to go teach in Doha, Qatar for 5 years. When I took up that offer, so I was there for 5 years. Contract ran out, and in the meantime, I was consulting both for government and the private sector and nonprofits while I was there. Came back, was consulting for nonprofits for a while because I wanted to pay it forward, and found that I liked it so much that I wanted to work on the inside rather than being as a consultant. And so for the past 5 years, I was working for the Radiological Society of North America as their market research manager and sort of SME on all things research. So enough about me, but today what I'd like to share with you is sort of some of the things I've pulled out of being involved in market research in the nonprofit sector, which, having gone to a lot of market research conferences in and around Chicago and nationally, I get that I'm sort of an odd duck. Many people who are in market research are not in the nonprofit sector. And it is something of a specialization. But it's important to know, I think, for most of you, in one way or the other, to understand them, to expand your breadth of knowledge, but also, especially for you who are independent contractors, understanding nonprofits is essential if you're going to win a contract from them. So I want to give you a few tips and tricks on that. So let's get rolling. So first of all, some misconceptions about nonprofits. Nonprofit does not mean no profit. They make money. At least a lot of them do. They can make money. They just plow it back into the organization. Nonprofits don't do market research. Oh, yes, they do. There's a lot of things they want to know, whether it's about members or about their donors or about the reception of their work. There's a lot they want to know. In fact, some nonprofits are entirely devoted to research. So yes, nonprofits do research. Now, one big difference, and I'll get to this, is that it's not always named market research when you're in the nonprofit sector. It may be sub-labeled in a different way, and so recognizing those sub-labels is really important. Nonprofits have no resources. This depends. If you're in a smaller nonprofit, the resources can be tight. I was the first person hired, and then into the market research role at the nonprofit I was in, and I ran the desk for 5 years on a shoestring budget. However, I have colleagues in the nonprofit sector who have significant budgets to where they are outsourcing research on a regular basis. So it varies with the organization. So you really just want to pay attention to the specifics of a given organization. Distinguishing features. This is really important. So the mission is everything. So if you walk in the door and are pitching your services to a nonprofit and you don't know what their mission is and your pitch doesn't speak to their mission, you've probably lost your opportunity to win that contract. You have to speak to the mission. Everything that a nonprofit does in one way or another ties back to its mission. When you're working for a profit, you're obviously working towards KPIs, and if you're a public company, it's shareholder value and such. With a nonprofit, it's the mission. So the very first thing that if you're looking to work with or for a nonprofit is go find out what their mission is. Absolutely essential. I can't emphasize that enough. I know that as a working for a nonprofit, when vendors came to me with offers and they didn't know what our mission was, I literally closed the door on them. They weren't worth my time. I was too busy. So know the mission, speak to the mission. It's crucially important. The second point I want to bring out is, so my experience with nonprofits has really honed in me a real sense for consensus-based decision-making. So this is, so the way this manifests most often is that I, as a market research manager within an organization, spent probably 50 to 70% of my time building internal buy-in to the research I did. I needed to convince other departments that the research I did was valuable, was sound, made sense, because often they have a history of, well, we know who our members are, or we know who our people are. But so you have to build this consensus. You have to do a lot of storytelling. You do a lot of persuasion. Building internal relationships is really, really important. That said, once you've built that consensus, things actually move remarkably fast. Because once senior leadership buys into it, things just move very, very quickly. And surprisingly quickly. I mean, nonprofits have a reputation for being a little bit slow in making decisions. That's not unwarranted, but once they've made a decision, things really move fast. So again, if you're interacting with a nonprofit, understand that you need to do a lot of sort of hand-holding, persuasion, conversations with stakeholders, and identifying who those key stakeholders are in order to move forward. But once you have those internal advocates at a nonprofit, you're good. So when you're thinking about what is market research when you're talking to a nonprofit, this comes into there's a lot of different areas, but there are three big ones. So the first one is membership. So many nonprofits are membership organizations. They have members. If you're like, I worked for the Radiological Society of North America, our members were primarily radiologists. So the organization wants to know everything about their membership in order to sort of, depending on the mission, of course, to apply its mission and develop products and services that members need in alignment with the mission. So understanding the needs of members, understanding everything from like, what's the proper price point for annual membership? Do members like this convention or this service or this journal? All of that is stuff that I was asked routinely in my work. So understanding members for membership society is a big deal. So that's one area. Another big area is development. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with this is about raising funds. This is about donor maintenance. So when you see a nonprofit talking about development, they're talking about donor management and donor research. Who is donating money? How much are they donating? How often are they donating? Where do we find new donors? How do we increase the yield from existing donors? All of those kinds of questions, that's development. And that's, as you might expect for nonprofits, a large chunk of their interest for retaining people like me to do research. Finally, another category is evaluation. So evaluation takes a couple of forms. Some of it is product or program evaluation in sort of the typical way you would think of evaluation. Is this product working? Some UX work, some CX work, but also for nonprofits who offer continuing education, they often have accreditation requirements. And so part of that is making sure that their educational offerings are actually meeting the accreditation requirements. And so usually that takes the form of some sort of routine surveys that accompany education and then being called upon to analyze the results of those surveys. So all in all, that's sort of like the bare bones of that sort of nonprofits 101 for market research. So I'm gonna pause here and ask for questions first before we get into our groups. And I've got a poser of a question that Frankie can launch. But if there's any questions, by all means, please shout them out, or trying to see how I can do this. My screen is not amenable. But yeah, I'm open to questions.
Well, John, Bill Soliker here. So I also worked on the nonprofit side briefly at American Cancer Society. And if you were pitching a big loyalty study to the American Cancer Society, and you decided to come in, you and two of your colleagues, and kind of just proudly show off your Lance Armstrong bracelets. Would that be a good move or a bad move?
You know what? I would probably approach it a different way. I would say, you know what? And quite honestly, this is true. Like I am my family has been directly touched by cancer. And so I understand your mission and I strongly support your mission. You know, it's like my parents both died from cancer. You folks are doing good work. I want to help. How can I help you?
Yeah.
That's sort of, I mean, obviously that's a personal angle for me because of my family history, but at the same time, that passion comes through, especially in nonprofits. You know, there's a lot of in the nonprofit world, there's a lot of word of mouth, even across organizations. And so developing a reputation can really go a long way. And when when you work for nonprofits and they see that you have integrity, that
Well,
really goes a
yeah.
long way.
My point was, they were touting the wrong chair, the wrong nonprofit. Because I was at American Cancer Society and they were wearing the Live Strong, Lance Armstrong bracelets, which is a competitor. Uh, it'd be like kind of coming into Coke with your Pepsi can. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. Definitely a
yeah.
faux pas.